Astonishing X-Men. When John first sent me this particular image, one of the things that was really interesting was our conversation about it, because when you look at it, you think of it as the conventional X-Men, a return to just your conventional X-Men outfit. But in actuality, it's like the X-Men have gone through a series of changes. When they were first introduced, you can see on the far piece, I mean, they're at the school for gifted youngsters. They're wearing a school uniform. And then it's not until issue 39 that they actually get their own superhero costumes. So they go from this uniform to costumes. And then what had happened is when they were replaced with the Uncanny X-Men, they went back to having, they also had costumes, but the Uncanny X-Men did just the opposite. They went from costumes to uniforms. And then enter John, and in the first issue of Astonishing X-Men, they brought him back to costumes.
Well, that's actually still more of a uniform, though.
It is. Well, I think so. And in fact, it's sort of the opposite of how you deal with Superman. Superman's really maintained such a consistent look. The X-Men are the opposite. They've gone through so many different looks. It seems like every 10 issues they're just something else. But when they started, I always liked the idea that it was a uniform. It goes very well with the idea of the school and these guys.
It's like this is part of your uniform.
That's right. The flex bullets. You want me to tell you what your uniform is?
If you say my shiny bald head, I am going to slap you.
But, I always liked the idea that they had these things that unify them, but in the same meaning they have, they're such strong individuals, it's hard to put them all in the same wrapper. And as time went by, I think they also just had to be sexier in a way. They couldn't just wear the original kind of Kirby, the yellow and black. And it also follows the trend of how comics and comic art worked. In the 60s, it was a specific thing. In the 70s, it looked different. The 80s, you had Byrne doing his thing. In the 90s, they went through this period where suddenly everyone was wearing everything. The characters wore Cyclops, who shoots beams out of his eyes. That's all he needs to do. Is suddenly wearing more utility belts than Batman has in his closets, and he's wearing them on every part of his body. There's pockets and sleeves.
Your friend designed that. You should watch what you're saying.
Who's that?
Your friend designed that. You should watch what you're saying.
Well, many people designed those. Just the whole, every hero suddenly looked like this. Not just the X-Men, but specifically the X-Men. And my question is, what is in those pockets? Car keys?
Floss.
But, and then we kind of come back to the idea of the uniform, and they were, they were kind of in this, to the left there, which I like a lot, the jackets and the leather and everything else. When I came on the book, Joss Whedon and I talked about whether we wanted them to look like superheroes again. And, I grew up really liking the Claremont John Byrne era. And I wanted to bring them back as close as Marvel would let me to the, what I consider the tried and true combination of the uniform and superhero. So meanwhile, they all have things that are very similar on their costumes, but each one of them stand on their own. To the left is Kitty Pryde, who of all of them is wearing something very similar to the original uniform, because she, to me, is still very much a student. Even, especially the way we reintroduced her, she feels like she's constantly catching up. The Beast, who's in blue, he, in the series before us, though I love the design, I don't think that character would ever wear boots. He uses his feet as much as he uses his hands. And I like the idea of seeing his fur, so I wanted to really open him up and let you see this, this guy who's turning into a monster. Let's see what an individual he is. And Cyclops, again, no pockets. If he's got his car keys, he's hiding them. He's hiding them somewhere. But really all I wanted, his costume is all about the visor. It's just this red line that goes across his face, and that's really the only thing that matters when it comes to him. Wolverine is all angles. There's nothing really round about him. From his mask to the designs all over the spandex or whatever he's wearing, it's all jagged edges, just like the knives that come out of his hand. Everything is about cutting you to pieces. Emma stands as kind of a figure who away from the rest. The only thing about her, and you can't see it because of Wolverine's hand there, but she has her belt buckle is the X, and it's the only thing that connects her to the rest. But she's the White Queen, so she kind of had to wear white. But I like the idea that of combining the hero with the uniform, especially with X-Men. That's it.
Okay, and then the next was working with characters that reference existing characters, and I'd like to have Alex talk a little bit about Project Superpowers, and John talk a little bit about Planetary. These are the images of the first two issues in issue 0, which shows some of Alex's artwork and the multiple characters. But Alex was also kind of to provide some of the sketches, and so we have an image, for instance, here of the Black Terror, the comic it was based on, or the character that it was based on, and then Alex's rendition. And I'd be really interested to hear you talk a little more about the project. There's a whole issue of like where the characters come out of the public domain, etc.
Basically, one publisher that is a company that both John and I work for, as well as is run by a close friend of ours, decided he wanted to create his own superhero universe by pulling a lot of these characters out of public domain that had been lost for 60-some years. Their main period of publication was in the prime selling period of the 1940s when comics ruled the world, or at least ruled most of America. And characters like the Black Terror here and the original Daredevil were, were two of these characters that were extremely popular in this time period, on a similar level to characters like Superman and Batman, and they ceased publication and their companies went out of business, and then, so on. That's why we can do what we are doing by resuscitating them now. And so the challenge for me as a designer approaching it was, how do I dust these things off in a way that is appealing to a modern audience? And like this character, the Daredevil, which if any of you know Daredevil, the traditional modern comics character, his name was pretty much just taken from the original one because it's a great name and it was a great looking character. And arguably the very design of Spider-Man was in some ways spun from, I think, the ground broken by this great character design of just a simple split of red and dark blue, and such a sleek, skin-tight outfit where the face is covered with a mask that is more like a face than it is a mask. My only approach, and that's not much of one, I understand, but is just to treat it like it's almost fetish wear, where it's this slick, tight-fitting thing that is much like a naked body. And in my renderings, if you go back to the first part with my paintings, that the attempt there is to try and make it seem alive in a way that it's the opposite of the experiment I was running with Superman, where I wanted to study how the human body looked with a real fabric on it. Here, I'm just trying to render something that is, in a way, the product of pure imagination. It's a costume that I have no idea how it would really work. It would take a full effects team to make this work with latex and rubber and modern movie makeup, but it gets into the idea of almost a living creature as a superhero, something it's not a costume, it is just what he is.
I think there might be some places downtown that could do that, though.
Too true.